You know, sometimes you watch a story unfold and think, wait, are they actually doing this? That's exactly the feeling right now with President Trump and tariffs. Seriously, Americans used to be somewhat on board with these trade wars, but today, the mood has flipped hard. Let's start with something most people overlook. Trump's push for tariffs isn't just unpopular, it's one of the biggest policy misfires of his second term. Back in November 2020, about 52% of Americans said they supported new tariffs on imported goods. That might have seemed modest, but it showed at least half the country was willing to go along with it. Fast forward to fall 2025, and the numbers have done a complete 180. Now 60% of Americans are against these tariffs. That's not a small shift. That's a 20-point margin against the policy. Here's where things get interesting. The tariffs aren't just aimed at China, which was the original target everyone talked about.
Pushing during the second term. What are we talking about here? Well, why don't we just look at this? New tariffs on imported goods. You go back to November of 2024, the majority, 52%, were in favor of it. Look at where we are now in 2025, in the fall of 2025. 60% of Americans are opposed to Trump's tariffs. So we're talking about a 4-point margin in favor, switcheroo, now to a 20-point margin against. And of course, there was all this news coming out of the World Series, right? Canada tariffs. We're not just talking China, we're talking Canada and tariffs. And get this, we're talking about just 36%, as I look at my little footnote here on the bottom, who support new tariffs against Canada. So the bottom line is this: if I were advising President Donald John Trump when it comes to his policies, I'd say step off the tariffs, at least from a political point of view, because the bottom line is it doesn't sell with the American people. It's one of the largest shifts that we have seen during Trump's second term in office. Yeah.
No, now Canada is in the mix. And the numbers there are even worse. Only 36% of Americans support new tariffs on our northern neighbors. So politically speaking, if you're advising Trump right now, you'd probably tell him, step off the tariffs, at least for now, because this isn't selling with voters. And it's easy to see why. Let's talk about Canada. Most Americans have long seen our neighbors as friendly, polite, the people you want over for Thanksgiving dinner. So when Trump starts picking a fight with Canada, it's not like taking on China. It's taking on someone the public genuinely likes. Check this out. Canada's net popularity in the US is plus 149 points. Trump, he's sitting at minus 10. That's nearly a 60-point gap. In other words, most Americans would pick Canada over Trump any day. And yet here we are, watching him escalate tensions with a country that, by almost every metric, the American people love more than him.
I mean, the difference here might be that the economy has not greatly improved, and they're sort of seeing that this isn't going hand in hand. All right. What about how Americans feel towards our Canadian neighbors? Longtime friends, they're always considered to be the nicest people.
Yes.
What are they feeling now?
So, picking a fight with China is one thing. Picking a fight with Canada is just something totally different here. So what are you talking about? Net popularity in the United States. Well, Canada is far more popular than Donald Trump is here in the United States. Look at this. The net popularity rating of Canada is plus 49 percentage points. Look at the net popularity rating of Donald Trump here in the United States. It's minus 10. We're talking about Canada coming out nearly 60 points ahead on the net popularity rating versus Donald Trump here in the United States. When you pick on Canada as a United States president, you are picking on a country that the American people adore. They adore Canada. Canada has always been a friend to the United States, at least during our lifetimes. And when you're going after Canada, you are going against someone who is far more popular than you are with Donald Trump. Pretty much every single time among most Americans, Americans will choose Canada over Donald Trump, yet Trump has decided to pick yet another fight with somebody or some entity or some country that is more popular.
Now, flip the perspective. How do Canadians feel about the US and Trump specifically? Not great. In 2023, only 7% of Canadians viewed the US as a potential threat. Today, that number has jumped to nearly 48%. That's a massive shift in perception in just a couple of years, and the Trump administration's popularity there is sitting at minus 58 points. Basically, Americans love Canada, but Canada isn't exactly loving the US right now. So why does this matter? Because trade isn't abstract. It affects people's wallets. Congressman Brendan Boyle from Pennsylvania, a ranking member on the Budget Committee, put it plainly. These tariffs don't just annoy our allies. They make life more expensive for ordinary Americans. 40% of U.S. trade flows through Canada, Mexico, and China. Hitting one of those key partners with tariffs isn't just a political headache. It's a real economic problem. And it's not just the tariffs. Trump recently announced what he called a framework for a trade deal with China. Now, some people might see that as a positive step. But here's the thing. If the situation started because of policies that destabilized the market in the first place, maybe solving it later isn't exactly an achievement. As Boyle put it, it's like giving credit to an arsonist for maybe putting out the fire they started. And
then he is.
Any president would love to see that number under their name.
The last president that had this type of number was George W. Bush back in the early 2000s. No president has come anywhere close to how popular Canada is right now, and Donald Trump certainly is a long, long, long away. He cannot see Canada from his house when it comes to his net popularity.
All right, let's reverse this. How do Canadians feel about the United States?
They think that Donald Trump's a big hoser. That's what they think. They hate Donald Trump. They hate everything that he's doing. Canadians who say America is an enemy or potential threat, look in 2023, it was 7%. Look how high it's gone now. We're talking about 48%. We're talking about a nearly 48-point jump. And the Trump administration, my dear friends, has a net popularity rating in Canada of minus, get this, 58 points. So Americans love Canada, but Canadians no longer love the United States of America. Sarah?
Oh, Canada.
Oh, you went over there. Look at that.
Oh, Canada. I ran away from you because I don't want the Canadians mad with me. Thank you so much, Harry Henton.
Bye.
All right, joining us now, Pennsylvania Congressman Brendan Boyle, ranking member on the...
Then there's the political theater back home. Some Republican colleagues have escalated tensions in Washington to new extremes. One congressman even called Democrats terrorists over negotiation disputes around a government shutdown, a statement he later tried to soften by saying he meant hostage takers. But the damage was done. You can't just throw around extreme language and expect smooth negotiations afterward. Here's the bigger picture. At the heart of these disputes are real issues that hit Americans directly. Healthcare, for example, is on the line. Republican proposals in the last tax bill included cuts that could raise premiums for millions and eliminate coverage for over 15 million Americans. Democrats are pushing back, saying, "Don't make the American people pay for political games." And surprisingly, public polling shows a small majority siding with the Democratic approach here. Even more curious is how private money is entering the mix. A friend of Trump's recently donated $130,000 to help pay some military salaries during the shutdown. On the surface, it sounds noble. But dig a little deeper, and you realize this raises all kinds of questions about conflicts of interest. When massive personal wealth intersects with government operations, there's always the risk of something in return, whether intentional or not. So what's the takeaway? Americans are increasingly skeptical of Trump's tariff policies, annoyed at the extra costs hitting their everyday lives, and wary of international tensions with longtime allies like Canada. At the same time, domestic politics are heating up, with extreme rhetoric and questionable maneuvers dominating headlines. It's a complicated mix, but the bottom line is clear. Public support is sliding, and these policies are becoming a liability rather than an asset. If there's one thing to remember from all of this, it's that popularity and public perception matter, especially when they're tied to concrete issues like trade and the economy. Pick fights with a country the public loves, or make policies that hit Americans' wallets, and the approval ratings will follow. It's that simple. So, as this story continues to unfold, keep an eye on how Americans and our neighbors respond. The numbers, the reactions, and the stakes are only getting bigger. If you found this breakdown helpful, consider subscribing. I appreciate you.